Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome, welcome. I'm Daniel Tanh, and my Chinese name is Tang Hall, pronounced in the Teochew dialect. So shout out to all the Kaki Nang out there. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the Assistant Director of Learning Innovation here at NYU McSilver Institute's Community Technical Assistance Center. I also have with me my two colleagues who helped make this event happen. Vanessa and Jeannie, would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie, and I'm an instructional designer at the McSilver Institute. Originally from Taiwan, I came to the United States after completing my college education. While I have spent a significant amount of time in the States, or about 20 years, I still hold a strong connection to my Taiwanese roots, and I proudly identify myself as Taiwanese. The experience of living in two different cultures has definitely shaped my perspectives. One of the themes of our event today, AAPI is a very diverse group. Everyone has their own story, and I'm looking forward to hear from each and every one of the panelists today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Singh. My dad is from Guyana. My mom is from Trinidad. I am a first-generation Indo-Caribbean American. I am a program coordinator for the Community Technical Assistance Center, and I'm very excited that you are all here for this amazing offering.
Thank you. So we would like to welcome you to today's wonderful event in honor of a very special month. Expanding the narrative, healing during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month and beyond. The Asian diaspora living in the US is multicultural, multigenerational, and multidimensional, but whitewashing often ignores these multiplicities. So providing care and support really benefits from an increased understanding of trauma and racism within social and historical contexts. And we're excited to have 6 panelists, as you see here, Keith, Robin, Uzma, Linda, Maureen, and Annie, who will engage you in a learning opportunity and an experience that looks at their healing journeys through acts of creative self-expression. So before we get started, I want to take a moment to orient everyone so you know how to participate in today's event. Everyone has been muted to avoid any background noises, to not distract anyone. If you come across any technical issues, please chat to the hosts who will be able to assist you. We'd also appreciate if you could take a moment later to fill out the brief survey that appears in your screen after we close it out, and let us know if you have any suggestions or topics you'd like us to cover. This itself is a brand new kind of webinar, and it would be really helpful to hear about whether or not this format was effective in building self-awareness, knowledge, or skills, or anything else. And if you'd like to enable captions, please press the button at the bottom of the Zoom window now. And finally, the recording and presentation slides for this presentation will be posted on our website within the next 2 to 3 business days. So here's a brief overview of today. We're going to start with setting the stage now, and we'll share some more tips on how to be an active learner as you provide, as well as provide you with a brief overview of some important concepts to help you feel more engaged. We will then have 3 pairs share stories, spoken word, poetry, photography, art, and dance to help you see different concepts come to life in their own ways. Each pair has a clinician and a non-clinician, but everyone has valuable lived experiences and their own types of expertise. And after everyone is done, we're going to have a panelist discussion and go into Q&A time and some conclusions. And in order to ensure that we are able to answer as many questions as time permits, we're requesting that you send in your questions at any point during the webinar in the chat, and we will collect them and address them during the Q&A portion. So to get your continuing education credits, we'll showcase some more instructions at the end. For now, here's a brief list. And again, the slides will be posted in 2 to 3 business days. You must be a licensed social worker or LMHC. You have to be present for 75% of the offering at least. You must attend using your own unique Zoom link and attend on your own computer. On a phone is not accepted. Registration will open for CEs the day after the offering, which is tomorrow, and we'll include the link on slides at the end as well. So by the end of this webinar, we will have you really recognize manifestations of racism that impacted the mental health and well-being of the community. We're going to describe different examples of intergenerational historical trauma that have affected different communities in the Asian diaspora. And also, hopefully you'll be able to demonstrate an enhanced understanding of the role of the mental health system in healing and ways to do it both within and outside of it. So Some of the content today will be potentially triggering and may be alarming or cause strong emotions. So we welcome your emotions and possible tears, but recognize that you may be in an office environment and may not be part of a work culture that openly promotes showcasing emotional vulnerability among work colleagues. So just take a moment to identify a coping strategy during and after this event in case you need to tend to your mind, body, heart, and soul. So make note of your experience when you feel safe and when you feel unease, so you know which tools are working and which to adjust. We also need to think about how to be an active learner. So listen to our presenters, reflect on similarities and differences to further understand how you as a healer are part of a journey to heal from collective traumas inflicted by racism while helping others heal as well, whether you're part of the Asian diaspora or not. So bring your head, heart, curiosity, and bravery to develop greater awareness and compassion, and let that really guide and impact your assessment and delivery, service delivery skills intellectually, behaviorally, and emotionally. So understand in terms of undoing internalized racism that our 6 wonderful presenters do not represent entire countries, but are here to share their own expertise and lived experiences as part of multiple diverse communities. And finally, engage with us. Let us see you make noise, especially during the performance. I know you're muted, but use the chat box, show support, type appreciations, quote something someone says, use those Zoom reaction features. You see them floating up now. I see people really, yeah, try it out. Go ahead, clap, heart, whatever you need. Thank you. So first, I just want to showcase the work of this artist who developed it while she was on the New York City Commission on Human Rights, which is one of the public art pieces in New York City that people can also use as part of the city's toolkit for addressing anti-Asian bias, discrimination, and hate. As you can see here, it says, "I did not make you sick." And when we think about the Asian American Pacific Islander narrative today, we want to consider the start of the pandemic, because that art piece is a response to the way that the COVID-19 virus became associated with the China virus, the Wuhan virus, Kung flu, you name it. Xenophobia, a fear of foreigners really increased violent incidents of and reports of anti-Asian racism. During the pandemic, these increased reports of discrimination and hate crimes affected Asian American Pacific Islander groups the most, which were then associated with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, drinking, non-suicidal self-injury, and suicidal ideation. And so when we think about racism, we want to understand that it's not just about these individual acts that happen between people. It's not just about calling someone a racist name. It's also about the institutional, right? How do structures, policies, and systems lead to advantages for white people and the oppression of non-white communities? At the beginning of the pandemic in New York City, for example, when media organizations were reporting news about the city's first COVID-19 case, some news articles depicted pictures of New Yorkers who appeared to be Chinese in Manhattan, Chinatown, and Flushing and Queens, when the first individual was a woman who was traveling from Iran and lives in the Upper East Side and Upper West Side, one of them. And when we think about this circle, it's about cultural aspects of racism. How do dominant norms, values, beliefs, and standards validate whiteness and invalidate people and communities of color? So these norms assumed by the dominant society perpetuate racism, which lead into internalized racism, right? Internalized racism makes everyone incorporate racist ideologies based on white cultural norms as superior and non-white norms as inferior, and contributes to forms of self-hate, self-criticism, shame, embarrassment, and dislike of the self due to negative beliefs about non-white racial groups, which can lead to distancing and avoidance of others with similar ethnic backgrounds. And this all impacts negatively impacts self-image, self-esteem, psychological well-being, and the quality of life. And internalized racism both perpetuates stereotypes. So the model minority myth about Asians, for example, says that we're all supposed to have straight A's and be doctors. Well, none of us are doctors here, all right? And it will perpetuate that belief. And everyone who doesn't fit that is not quote unquote Asian enough. And then it also perpetuates avoidance of qualities suggestive of stereotypes that are quote unquote negative, right? So being a foreigner, if you speak English with an accent, that is looked down upon, right? So it makes everyone believe all Asians are minorities and makes everyone avoid wanting to be a foreigner. It makes everyone perpetuate Eurocentric beauty standards and behaviors, and makes everyone avoid having tans and avoid having single eyelids versus double eyelids. So internalized racism is very real. And so when we think about belongingness, the Asian American Foundation's report based on the social tracking of Asian Americans in the US Index, it's an annual survey of attitudes towards and stereotypes of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And in this year's survey, only 22% of Asian Americans said they completely agree to a statement that they belong and are accepted in the US. And among those who did not feel like they belonged, more than a third felt like they didn't belong in the workplace, which is where I'm now, in online spaces, which we are all on now, and in their own neighborhoods and in schools, with much of it due to discrimination based on race and not seeing others like them in positions of power. And this was especially emphasized among young Asian American women. So many people know that use of mental health services then is highest among people who are white and lowest among Asians, but people actually even internalize racial stereotypes about mental illness. Defined by the researchers, mental illness, for example, was rated as more typical of white people compared to other racial groups, especially when white people were asked to rate them. And then Asians were rated as significantly less likely to have mental illness, and mental illness itself was perceived as significantly less typical for Asians compared to other groups. And such internalized notions of mental health and racism can certainly lead to the stigma of seeking care and contributes to low levels of service utilization among Asian Pacific Islander groups. And does this mean that Asian Pacific Islander groups do not care about mental health or don't promote mental health or don't do things to promote mental health? No, absolutely not. We have to expand the narrative around that, because there's all sorts of other practices outside of the mental health care system in which engagement in mental health happens. And when we consider how racism has been internalized, we saw that many people had scapegoated China and many people would look Chinese, but this happens all throughout history to feed into our ideas and beliefs. And history showcases the institutionalized forms of racism. And we need to be aware of historical trauma, which impacts specific cultural groups. In this case, we are talking about the long history of Asian Pacific Islander groups being systematically oppressed, which really impacts emotional, psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness throughout generations. So if you ask yourself whether you're Asian or not, how much you know about key Pacific Islander Asian Pacific Islander American history, you likely might reflect this chart. Whenever I do similar presentations, probably the first one here is the one people know the most, followed by the second. World War II incarceration of the Japanese American community in internment camps and Chinese American workers building the US Transcontinental Railroad. Fewer people know about the murder of Vincent Chin. Even in this middle one, where there's resettlement of Southeast Asian American refugees, most people think about the Vietnam War. But my parents were also refugees, came here escaping the Cambodian genocide, the Khmer Rouge genocide. And all these historical events, whether it's the Chinese Exclusion Act, hate crimes against South Asian Americans after 9/11, or the targeting of Asian women in the Atlanta spa shootings 2 years ago, have an impact. And so despite struggles now and throughout history, because of all the ways in which Asian Pacific Islander groups work together with other communities of color and their allies, it's important to say that members of the Asian diaspora belong here. Learning history alongside learning about racism, which goes hand in hand with everyone understanding how everyone in this room has internalized racism, helps us better understand all the ways we can help and also all the ways we can hurt, especially within our power as mental health providers. And so understanding all this helps us with understanding how to build more resilience in ourselves and with the people we work with. How do we as practitioners help connect with relationships, help people connect with relationships to culture, connections to spiritual traditions? How do we, in our roles as practitioners, improve self-image, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-management, and help-seeking? How do we as Asians see ourselves as resilient and find meaning in life despite difficulties? And when we think about ethnic identity, then it's important to create spaces that ensure that people are able to have a positive relationship with their ethnic identity that foster learning about history. Because we want to be able to say, how do we resolve internal conflicts about ethnicity and identity, and then go there? When we do have that resolution more, as these researchers reported, there's a high positive impact on self-esteem and adolescent development. There are protective elements of ethnic identity that are protective even during times of stress related to discrimination. So in order to learn from history, to feel positive about our ethnic groups, and to resolve conflicts about our ethnic groups, it is important to establish that Asian Pacific Islander Americans, this is our home too. So when we think about healing, it's healing from cultural racism, institutionalized racism, interpersonal racism, and internalized racism. Understand the powerful role of learning about manifestations of internalized racism and the history of how racism is perpetuated through traumatic acts systemically. Look into how presenting problems can be reframed as survival strategies within contexts impacted by anti-Asian racism. And while considering ways to survive oppression, also consider what are ways for individual and collective action to happen to combat oppression inside and outside of sessions. And really understand the ways that sharing stories, which will happen today, help with resisting, rewriting, and reaffirming identities and experiences. So on that note, I wanted to consider the power of self-expression, which you will feel soon. I want to just note one important aspect about bodily movement with whole person approaches to psychotherapy. It helps with understanding ways to care for the self and others, gets people out of the numbness and fragmentation caused by trauma, including racial trauma, and supports connection, creativity, and integration of existential and spiritual perspectives. And so this power is really summarized by this quote. When a social group is in a helpless situation, individuals typically experience themselves as isolated and cut off from others. One of the things that the experience of making art together does is to restore the sense of a living community, of being part of a whole that is larger than oneself. This is solidarity, the experience of being together with others that is an essential part of being in the world. It takes place within a celebratory setting, one in which the joy of singing and dancing together can bind a social group in a mutual feeling of kinship. But the arts are also capable of holding the experience of mourning what an individual or group has lost. Mourning and a celebration are two essential ways in which art making can touch the essence of being human. Both our tears and our laughter hold us together. So we are about to have tears and laughter. As a reminder for everyone, please type appreciations, quote our performance, and use the Zoom reaction features, yes, to help us see you make noise. Following each performance, we will have a brief moment of silence in case anyone needs it. We will also activate a poll everywhere, which will be posted in the chat. So if you're having any responses to what you just witnessed in your mind, body, heart, and soul, and you feel safe to share, you're going to have the opportunity in that poll everywhere to share a single word or phrase to describe your response. And we ask that you only put in one response after each performance so that we can see the buildup of how everyone is reacting. That should be posted in the chat soon, if not already. And with that being said, we will start with Linda and Uzma, who will share stories that showcase an understanding of history and trauma. First up, we have Uzma, whose contact information is also listed here. Again, you also have the slides posted in 2 to 3 business days. Uzma, she, her pronouns, is a writer, sociologist, and researcher who focuses on understanding the concept of love. She is a South Asian member of the Desi diaspora and a daughter of immigrants. In recent years, she has focused on the intersection of social theory, community building, love, and art and creation as a healing practice to address generational trauma and located in colonial contexts. Everyone, please welcome Uzma. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here today with you all. And I call myself a Kairos storyteller, which means whatever is in my heart in the moment. Kairos is a Greek word for like seize the moment type of time, is what feels right to share. So this offering is actually from my journal this morning, and based on some reflections that I've had a lot about being a person in my body. And I'm a sociologist of love, and I ask two research questions a lot, which I invite you to think about for a moment. Feel free to share in the chat. And then I'll read from my diary to you, which says Uzma Chowdhury Volume 3, which is funny. So first, what is your earliest memory of love? Feel free to think about that, put it in the chat. And what is your earliest memory of lovelessness? And so that's kind of how I start my interviews. But I think about that for myself too, and I'll actually start reading from here. But I actually typed it up, so this is just a prop. What is your earliest memory of love? My father's voice. What is your earliest memory of lovelessness? My father's silence. Silence is a theme for me when it comes to understanding my Asian identity. For example, in the summer of 2014, I was at an induction program for my first job out of college when I was going to be a teacher. In the spirit of promoting diversity and inclusion, the organization doing the summer training created affinity groups so that we could unpack our relationship with our work as educators, given our own racial identities. When they told us to find our affinity group, they gave us 4 options: Black and low socioeconomic status, Black and high socioeconomic status, Latinx and low socioeconomic status, Latinx and high socioeconomic status. And the other groups were the white groups. And everyone trickled out of the main room. And I was in the room alone with a few other Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islander identifying folks and some Indigenous folks as well. And a few other colleagues were all looking nervously at each other, suddenly just in silence, taking up a painful amount of space with no space of our own, ironically. I asked one of the facilitators where the rest of us should go, and instead of making another space, they told us to choose one of the 2 white groups. And so I spent the rest of the day in silence. And 10 years later, thinking about this memory, I think about why it hurt for many reasons, but mostly it hurt because of my own silence, which reminded me, like I said, of my father's. Silence is something I inherited. My body is a container for generations of colonial trauma. I inherited the silence of my ancestors, for whom the silence was survival. In therapy, I work on feeling my pain rather than intellectualizing it or talking about it without feeling it. And I used to be so angry at my father for his silence, but now in understanding our colonial history, I find strength and love and forgiveness for him. For him, silence was protective. As a child, when I did not have control, I constructed elaborate and sometimes bizarre ways of being seen and heard. And as an adult, I'm learning easier ways of being seen and heard. Instead of surviving pain silently, I can process it, feel it, and release it. I inherited the silence from my father, but I know now that he inherited this from his father. My father lived through a devastating war that he never talks about. His father lived through a different devastating war that he never talked about. And I used to be angry about this, but in learning my history, I have found forgiveness and understanding for those whose only choices were to fight or be silent. Everyone says you have to feel to heal. It's really hard for me. But when I think about my father who witnessed genocide, perhaps not feeling is a form of survival. For him, feeling has a cost. And today I look at my father with softness and understand that perhaps the enormity of his pain, if felt, if vocalized, would break him. And perhaps his silence is an act of love. What I thought was lovelessness might be love for himself and me, because perhaps it is all the capacity he has to do. Being Asian is so confusing. The world's largest continent has a history soaked in the blood of the colonial past and present. But in understanding it, I can begin to forgive myself and heal. Silence has been a theme for me up until this point, but now I'm taking steps towards a new theme: forgiveness and hope. And I found this on Instagram, but I wrote it in my diary. I don't know who the source is. Optimism sits at the core of my despair. Hope is birthed from my hopelessness, not from an idealism that is intangible. My despair is a refusal to police my imagination. My despair is not an end. It is a bridge to the intangible. Instagram 2023. Thank you. And that's from my diary today.
Our moment of silence. I see everyone's hearts, many hearts go out to Uzma and everyone who has similar stories. So many powerful reactions in the chat box happening. I saw everyone's reactions, all of our reactions in real time, our faces. So everyone, here is the opportunity for you to go to this poll everywhere and really simply Oh, it is disappearing in the chat box. There you go. poev.com/CTAC 2023. Please go there. There you go. Thanks, Vanessa. And just spend a moment to put down, you know, if you're having any responses to what you just witnessed in your mind, body, heart, and soul, and you feel safe to share, please type in a single word or phrase to describe your response. And we will take a look at everyone's later. And, you know, if your browser doesn't support it, that's fine. You can feel free to put what you feel safe to say in the chat box. But if you can, take a look at this and write down your feelings. And so as you all do that, we will prepare for Linda. So everyone can see this. Linda, pronoun she, her, LMSW, is a trauma therapist, educator, and consultant who specializes in cutting-edge brain and body-based modalities and incorporates consideration of issues pertaining to the impact of oppressive systems upon identity, mental health and well-being, and invisibilized wounds of racial trauma and attachment trauma. Born in Vietnam, raised in Australia, and now living in Alaska, Linda is a former child refugee who's not only redefining what it means to be Vietnamese, to be Australian, and to be a United Statesian. She's redefining what it means to be wounded, whole, and a healer. Linda is passionate about breaking the cycle of historical and intergenerational trauma at the individual and community levels, and deeply believes in the healing power of coming together in community to share stories, to sing, and to grieve. Linda, take it away.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you everyone for such a warm welcome into this space. So I'm going to share with you a piece of spoken word storytelling, poetry, song, and to offer you a context for this. I'm a former child refugee. I left Vietnam at the age of 2 years and 2 months with my parents. My mother was 19 and 6 months pregnant with my little sister, and my father was 26 at the time. And this was 1979. And so it's taken me the work of a lifetime to make sense of what happened to me and happened to us. And this piece is called You Lost a War, We Lost Our Country. As a child, between the ages of 6 to 10, I had a handful of experiences where Anglo-Australians would come down to my eye height level and say to me, "You lost your country," with faces and voices strained with an empathy that I did not understand. In hindsight, 1, I don't even remember the context for these comments, and 2, that's such an inappropriate thing to say to a child that somehow I still remember those moments all these decades later. In early 2022, just last year, at the age of 45, I read a blog that contained a video interview, and for the first time ever, I felt it in my body what it means to lose one's country. The blog author was a South Vietnamese man and his wife who, during the rapid southbound sweep of communist forces that led to the fall of Saigon, made it onto one of the South Vietnamese naval vessels that was stationed off of the coast of Vietnam. And these gargantuan naval ships were burgeoning, overloaded with as many Vietnamese refuge seekers as possible. A few days later, on April 30, 1975, the South Vietnamese president declared surrender. And when this was announced over the radio on this particular naval vessel, well over 10,000 Vietnamese fell silent. It was over. The war was over. Shortly after, this vessel, en route to Guam, headed towards Filipino waters to restock and refuel. And in accordance with international maritime law, because South Vietnam no longer existed as a sovereign nation, the South Vietnamese flag needed to be lowered. And the silence broke into solemnity as the entire ship sung together the South Vietnamese national anthem. Can you imagine seeing the flag of your country be lowered because your country no longer exists? And singing your national anthem for the last time as a sovereign nation, as an act of collective grief. You lost a war. We lost our country. And now, my heart strains with empathy for my parents. 43 years later, I finally get it. I then realized that I didn't know the national anthem of my homeland, a country that no longer exists. And so I searched for it on YouTube, and I found the military version with blaring brass and drums, a rally call to unite with patriotic love for land and people. And then I found the choral version with elegantly dressed young Vietnamese singers with an equally elegant orchestra. And as the camera panned the audience, I saw in the faces of the older generation a distant pain just beneath the surface of faraway stares while mouthing the words to a long-lost country. I knew that pain. I'd seen it my entire life on my parents' faces. And through the tears for the loss of a homeland I never had, I resolved to one day learn the national anthem to my country that no longer exists, and to sing it to my parents. About a week after my discovery of the South Vietnamese national anthem, my dad video messaged me. I wasn't ready, but I took a big deep breath and I said, "Hey, Dad, do you know the Vietnamese national anthem?" And he smiled real big at me, that wondrous smile of, wow, my girl is actually Vietnamese after all. And he started singing. Này công dân ơi, đứng lên đáp lời sông núi, đồng lòng cùng đi, đi, đồng lòng cùng đi. Wow. It's been over 60 years since I last sung it. My child, con ơi, help your father with the words. And I happened to have the lyrics handy because I was trying to learn the words to the song. So I read out the first few words of each line, and Dad would sing the rest of the line. Này công dân ơi, đứng lên đáp lời sông núi, đồng lòng cùng đi hy sinh, tiếc gì than sông, vì tương lai quốc dân, cùng sông pha khói tên, làm sao cho núi sông từ nay luôn vững bền, dù cho thay phơi trần rộng nhau, thù nước lại bao đảo đến bao. Tears were knocking at my door. My first ever duet with my daddy at the age of 45. Dad started spontaneously sharing joy-filled memories from his childhood. It was the late 1950s in the far south of Vietnam, before the partition of North and South Vietnam and before the arrival of US troops. Precious memories that I'd never heard before. And then I played a YouTube recording of the Vietnamese national anthem to sing it together with Dad. And the music made it real. On his face, I saw glimmers of a lost homeland and the pain of a once carefree boy whose heart I've spent my entire life wanting to break into. if this is the only duet I ever get to sing with you, Dad, it's more than enough.
It's more than enough. Thanks for all the hearts and the comments and the words that everyone is sharing in the chat. Now is also the time to add whatever you're experiencing to the cloud, the word cloud. Just take a moment to put your response. I'm seeing it populate, and here is, can everyone see it? The biggest word in the center, powerful. Silence. Wow. So we will revisit this again after the next pair, but for now, thank you, Uzma, Linda. We would love to also hear from you a little bit. How did understanding racism, that's next one. How did understanding history and trauma shape how you engaged in personal healing versus helping others heal?
I think there's so much of healing that in many like Western contexts that's focused on really individual fate, like solutions, like it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. And I think in many ways that's true. But I was reflecting this morning as I read from my diary on how much context was necessary for me to really understand the people around me and intimate relationships and family relationships and why they are the way they are, and how there's a unique experience of people who are marginalized, colonized, immigrant, refugee, that contributes to them and how they show up in the world. And I have to find ways to understand my parents and what it means to be like a first generation child in this country. And just, I think there's something that's really new and unique for me in community building with intimate relationships around forgiveness. And without history, I don't think I would have been able to access forgiveness as a portal. And I think forgiveness is very much aligned with hope. Like how I look at my father now is so different than how I used to look at him. And a lot of my pain comes from that fractured relationship. But when I understand that he is also like a small child inside, like me, who also had a father who was a small child inside, the things that happen to them in this world are inextricable. Like the colonial past, the history is inextricable from how we show up in the present. And there's a quote that's like, the present is shot through with the past. And I just, remembering that is healing, because it's not just me. Like this didn't just happen to me. And as you heard from the connections even between Linda and my story and more stories today, I'm just so aware that story sharing and history sharing, accurate history sharing, is a big contributor to healing, because you just realize systems of oppression are built to make you feel alone. And the truth is we're not. We have a lot of commonalities. And if we can start talking to each other about it, we can see each other's as mirrors rather than fractures.
I grew up without an origin story. My parents experienced traumatic homesickness because we were refugees. And without an origin story, I grew up bereft of a sense of who I am and who I belong to, where I come from, and where those whom I love come from. And this psychological homelessness is a phenomenon that I see as very much reflected in those of us who have histories of being uprooted or displaced. And without an origin story, I also grew up without my parents being able to share the myths and stories of our people and to sing the songs of our village. And the weightiness of the silence of that emptiness, I filled with a sense of shame about who I am and where I come from, because my parents couldn't speak without experiencing traumatic homesickness. And yet I sought to find the origin story that would help me to make sense of myself and of my life. And as a young adult, I enrolled in college into modern Vietnamese history and modern Chinese history and Vietnamese language studies. And I had professors who were white as well as Vietnamese, and they knew why I didn't know. And they didn't need to ask why I didn't know. And they didn't need to ask why I wanted to know. And these days, as a trauma therapist, and I want you all to write this down. This is my professor hat being put on. Traditional psychology says, what's wrong with you? Trauma-informed psychology says, what happened to you? Culturally informed psychology says, what happened to your people? And liberation psychology says, and what continues to happen to you and to your people. And so I want to thank all of those of you who are here today, listening to us as we share our voices with you, because we're not silent. We've been screaming this whole time. You haven't been listening. And over time, I stopped listening to myself. And then I stopped listening to my parents. And grief comes with reclamation as I now listen to the wisdom in our spaces that have always been there waiting for us.
Linda, thank you so much for such words of wisdom. I know people are taking it to heart. And also we're struggling to try to finish writing what you told them to write, but rest assured everyone, this will be posted in 2 to 3 business days for you to rewatch and rehear both Uzma and Linda and the power that they just shared, again, as much as you'd like. My heart is going through so many things right now, but get ready. Next, we will have Keith and Maureen do some spoken word about different manifestations of racism. First, we have Keith, pronounce he, him, a Chinese American spoken word poet, psychotherapist, and multicultural lecturer who uses poetry to ask questions about race identity, self-love, and social justice. Keith believes that spoken word can comfort, heal, and confront the past and the present, build bridges between communities, celebrate roots, and inspire a sense of social connection at a time our culture is urgently in need of it. Keith, take the stage. Keith, you're muted.
I have to say that over again. Yes. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone. Uzma, Linda, I'm so honored to be here with all of you. So my piece is called The Ache for Home, and it's about my challenges with my Asian masculinity. I avoided writing this for a long time until somebody who runs storytelling events asked me to do it. And so then I was forced to. And what this poem does is it asks me to face what's mine to face. And I'll leave it at that. The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. Maya Angelou. To be Asian and male in America, for me, that ache for home, for a safe place where I am not questioned as I am, that ache is bone deep. I have been desperately searching for home and my rightful place my whole life, but I am lost. I long for a balm to soothe this ache. The salve in my salvation lies in facing what is mine to face. I testify to heal the wounded male in me, to find the loving voice that whispers, my beautiful Asian boy, the shame you feel has never been yours to keep. You see, trauma isn't just what happened, it's what should have been done or said. This is for the beautiful Asian boys raised on American movies and TV, believing a sidekick was the best they could ever be. This is for all the beautiful golden boys never seeing someone with their face possessing any romantic capacity. My Asian brothers and I have been robbed of what makes all of us human, our ability to love, our core humanity, racial castration, structural emasculation, feminization, our soul wounding injuries. This is for the golden boys who were made to hate their eyes, their looks, their bodies. This is for the boys who were told manhood is measured by his height and sexual prowess, by how much he can hide his fears, sadness, and hurt, his refusal to ask for help, how much alcohol he can consume. So disabling when you've inherited the genes for the Asian glow. There's no rest facing a daily Eurocentric standardized tests when we aren't given standardized lives. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, barring Chinese from coming to this country, wasn't repealed until 1943. But the modern day No Dating Asian Males Exclusion Act has yet to be repealed. Being Asian and male means you can feel so undesirable when a girl asks you to the high school dance. You don't believe she's serious. And sadly, you don't accept her offer. It means the math teacher at my new high school is so positive I am a math whiz. She forces me to give up lunch hour after lunch hour to take test after test. I buckled under the pressure. I didn't do well. I was ashamed to look at her for the rest of the year. You see, you can be ashamed when you don't live up to someone else's stereotype of you. It means you can be pulled over by your local police in your small California Central Valley town and ban you from a public restaurant you just left. Rage and impotence are a scream lodged in your throat, so you return several more times until your arrest. for a DWA, dining while Asian. I claim my years of self-loathing when I was ashamed to see someone that looked like me. When I saw an Asian in a well-known rock group on TV, he reminded me of someone I despised, myself. Imagining others would despise him too, I mocked him to beat others to the punch. Shame makes you dissociate from people that look like you. My first day at my new high school, I saw the new girl was also Asian. Filled with panic, I ran ahead to my new classroom so she wouldn't enter with me because I didn't want the class to think we were together. Being Asian and male means many men I meet for the first time on the basketball court, a friend of my son's, a client in my office tell me, hey, I'm really into Asian girls, as if it's a compliment. It means a complete white stranger may cast a colonial gaze upon your daughter and assume he can walk up to you and tell you, your daughter is beautiful, and ask for a fucking high five. I light a candle for the little boy whose trauma lives in an alley on the west side of Fresno, who waits for me to bring him home. The alley where his cousins would steal pomegranates from Big Hat Pete's tree. The alley where Michael would pick his victims like my cousins picked fruit, choosing the freshest and the ripest ones. I was ripe for the picking. Hands under my pants in exchange for a bike ride. My shame the greater because my skin betrayed me. Starved for the unfamiliar comfort of touch by Chinese parents who never held me. Deleted from memory, the bleach of dissociation could not wash away the self-hate, because a real man is never a victim. In California, it was illegal for a Chinese face like mine to be seen after dark. So the Chinese built tunnels under the streets to travel at night. I built tunnels in my heart where my song went underground to survive. I celebrate my song. My song beats with the rhythm of Guangdong, the land where the mountains meet the sea. Let us celebrate the beauty of all of our songs. Let us celebrate a masculinity based on the bravery to truly be ourselves and ask for what we need and want, not based on putting others down, but on lifting others up. Let us celebrate in the places where we dream. I want you to know, weak is not my name. Sidekick is not my name. Afterthought is not my name. Punchline is not my name. My name is hope. My name is heart. My name is courage. My name is love. Thank you.
Oh, Keith, Asian male to Asian male. I have tears. Ooh. Everyone, please post your reactions in the chat, put it in the word cloud. Just share what's going on and remember the coping strategies you might need to use right now. And while you're adding, get ready for another emotional performance with Maureen. So Maureen P. Medina, pronouns she, her, Filipina American, raised in Lenape, New York City, currently residing in Portugal. She's currently the author of My Fears Out Loud, a poetry collection about self-discovery and mental health, generational and cultural trauma, and social injustice against both humans and non-human animals. She guides meditations and hosts writing workshops with the goal of healing through writing and exploring the mind-body connection. Maureen, take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Uzma, Linda, and Keith for laying it all out there. I don't know about you, but I've been crying. So the piece I'm sharing is called Happy Ending. And at the peak of COVID, I began to fear for my safety whenever I was out in public or at night. I would bring a whistle or some protective tools, taser, with me whenever I'd leave the house. I developed anxiety and then I realized, how could I be an ally to my fellow people of color when I was only beginning to connect with my culture because of the rise in Asian hate crimes? So Happy Ending is my token piece where I first embraced and started defending my roots. And I wrote it in reaction to the shootings in the 3 spas in Atlanta, Georgia in 2021, where 8 people were destroyed in a hate crime. And it was the final catalyst to return to my roots, to learn about them. And actually, when I wrote it, it was almost like a signaling to my family. So here we go. Happy Ending. Is that what you came for when you sought my people out because you had a bad day? Fetishizing my existence and eliminating me simply because you couldn't control yourself? Your white supremacy could not be contained. Shots fired, hatred in every bullet, yet we've died many times before. When you came to our countries uninvited, our beds unsolicited, our cultures that you appropriated and then sold to us as a sign that you were here. Children born from a lack of protection, colonization, is that a justification or an ultimatum? You forced us into your melting pot, watching all the colors become one, dividing us with a gradient. White is right, but yellow is the next best thing. Stand back, Tiger Mom. She vilifies blackness as though it's dirty, ugly. But Black lives matter and they are beautiful. We are beautiful. And no, brown is not lesser than, brown is not illegal, brown is not lazy. We are brown too, and we work hard. We provide for our own and we stop. Tiger Mom won't have any of it. We are not them, she says. We earned our way. Good at math, straight A's, straight hair, typecast, though we are Black and we are brown and we are indigenous, we are every single color, texture, and blessing. We are not a monolith and we are storytellers if we believe the myth of the model minority. Hey, how do Asians name their kids? Just drop a bunch of silverware down the stairs and listen to the sounds they make. Ching, chong, chink, gook. We are the punchline, but we respond with obedience. Loyal to the monster that mocks chinky eyes and seeks the crease in our eyelids without ever questioning how a colorful society can brim with oppression and individual suppression, or how a colorblind society overlooks what it won't put a name to. Racism, xenophobia. How can we call them strangers when we have all met before? hate crimes, all different iterations of the same sentiment that we are other, we are less than, and we are stained by color. Distorted by your concentration camps, cheap labor and conditioning, you pit us against each other and run away without incident. You loathe all things foreign and call us essential while you try to erase us. We adjust and adjust our assimilation irrelevant to your contempt for all things made in China. Well, the whole world is watching, and they know what you have done. They see who you are. They know that you have thrived from our stolen freedom, and you are not a disease. You are not the exception. You are not a mental health issue. You are not a disability. You are not a broken childhood, and you are not a bad day. You are our friend, lover, partner, neighbor, sibling, parent, nurse, doctor, lawyer, judge, and jury. And you are the problem. You are violence perpetuated. You are the stigma. And you, misogynist, white supremacist, colonizer, oppressor, racist, terrorist, you were made in America. Thank you.
You were made in America. Ooh, thank you, Maureen. Everyone, please add to the word cloud. Let us see what's going on with everyone. Powerful. Still the main word, but I'm also seeing hope. You see healing. Those words weren't highlighted before. So, as we're connecting through everyone's pieces, just really notice how that's going. Powerful, connection, empathy, hope, silence, shared, connection, emotional, beautiful. Thanks for everyone putting in what's going on for you. And so before we move on, Keith and Maureen, how did understanding and unpacking manifestations of racism for yourself lead to engagement and healing individually and with others?
Maureen, do you want to go first?
Sure. The manifestation of racism. It's funny, I was talking to Keith, well, we talk quite often, and what I said in like 10 minutes, he summarized in like one sentence that it manifested from my mom and within my family. So, my mom has a fair complexion and comes from a wealthy family in the Philippines. And, there and in some countries, darker complexions are associated with labor or laborers, the working class, and lighter complexions are associated with wealth and higher status. And so this colorist system that she was raised in was reinforced when she migrated to the US. And when she came here to the US, she was told that she was beautiful and being attractive would open doors. And so her first lesson as a female Asian immigrant was threefold. White proximity meant opportunity. Conforming to the white or Eurocentric standard of beauty meant acceptance, and both opportunity and acceptance are insurance. And, she's often said to me that if she had to choose between the Philippines or the US, she would choose the latter. So I really carried with me that notion of having to choose one identity over another. So as I leaned into the parts of myself that needed most tending, I learned that much of my internal conflict and unrest was deeply rooted in racism and colonialism. And this relieved a lot of pressure that I put on myself throughout the years. And it opened up this world of connection that I and maybe many others like me ached for. So now that I'm actively healing, I'm learning to give myself permission to embrace and nurture my multiplicity, which is something that Dan mentioned earlier. And I do my best with my workshops and my writing to help others to do the same. So thank you all so much for holding space.
Wow, thank you. So the way that I answered this was that my understanding of the impact of racism was the gift that came through giving voice to my experiences through writing poetry. Starting with my poem Erasure that somebody mentioned, which was my shame about my Chinese eyes. When I started writing about that, and I was waking up at 4 a.m. with this memory of being a child and having to draw a self-portrait as a 4th grader or 3rd grader. And I was so ashamed of the face that I had drawn that I turned in, I'm still sad about this. I turned in a picture of a little white boy. And by facing that and writing it down, I didn't know, but that was the portal into my understanding of how profound racism had left me injured, fragmented, broken, and exiled from myself. So each succeeding poem, it seemed to me that I was like tentatively opening up a door into a new room and speaking about what was still unspoken. So poetry really gave me a container for my trauma. I had none. I had no way of getting it out of me. You know, the immense disordering power of trauma needs a container. And for me, poetry gave me that. I didn't know it at the time. Poetry also gave me a vehicle to speak of my shame, because it seemed everything I felt regarding racism was about my shame. And shame derives its power from being in the darkness. It thrives in the darkness. But if we speak shame, it's been revealed to me again and again, it begins to wither in the sunlight. So poetry gave me a way to bring it out into the sunlight. And my litmus test, I knew that I needed to be vulnerable and authentic if it was going to be of any worth to me. So my litmus test was, if I was scared to death to share something in front of people, I knew I was on the right track. So revealing myself repeatedly at open mics was so vital to my healing. I just forced myself to be vulnerable. And of course, as we've all said, that when you're marginalized, you feel so isolated and alone, and maybe you're the only one going through this. So the audience became my healing community. I felt heard. I felt seen. And I think what was restored to me was a sense of belonging. It was also empowering. It may sound kind of odd, but being the only Asian voice so often in a white space was actually very important to my healing in helping me claim my identity, my culture. It was frightening to get up in front of the sea of white faces and be so afraid that nobody would understand, no one would get it at the best, and at the worst that people might judge me or mock me. But pushed myself to do it anyway. I realized I had a choice. I could try to blend into this white space. And if I didn't share my story, it's like I wasn't even there. It would just be stories that would be wonderful, but they would be about white. They would be white stories. So I said, damn it. If I don't speak up for us, who will? So that created a grit in me, a determination, a toughness, almost like a crucible. You know, when you go through something very challenging and it transform you. So that's what happened with me. So when I took the stage and shared my stories, our stories, I embodied the representation that I hungered for my whole life. I was saying to these people, there are people like me below the radar with stories to tell. We have a history. We have nuance. We have depth. We hurt. We love. Portrayals beyond the easy stereotypes. I was saying, and others like me, our stories matter. We matter. And our stories are American stories. So all of that really, really helped me to heal. So it's through the form and then the process of storytelling that made so much of a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Maureen. I could hear the poetry even when you're just sharing your stories about how manifestations of racism showed up and what healing looks like and how you did it on your own with other people under certain gazes versus others with community. So thank you really for sharing such insight. And I think that sets the stage for us to really go to our next folks, Annie and Robin, who will share the powerful role of healing through creativity and movement. As if you didn't already understand the power of creativity after 4 people went. But Annie Wu, pronounced she, her, is a satellite baby of Chinese immigrants, a mother who acknowledges the role of transgenerational trauma while trying to make more aware choices as she raises her 6-year-old daughter, and as a mental health service user and advocate who has been in therapy for the past 5 years in New York City. Photography is her main medium for capturing, exploring, and examining her cultural identity and traditions, while painting has been her most recent medium for healing and processing her experiences. Through trying to understand her layers, she has written a book and continues to work on photography projects to give others like her a voice. Annie, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And everyone that went before me, oh my gosh, I am so emotional. And I just want to say that you guys are so courageous. This is such a courageous space to be a part of. And I'm very thankful. So I'm gonna just start and go into my presentation. So like Dan said, I am a satellite baby. And for those who don't know what that is, it is a child of immigrants who was temporarily sent back to their home country by their parents to be raised by relatives and then return to start school. So when that happened to me, I had a really difficult time socializing with kids. And when I came back to the US, I didn't have any friends. Since I didn't have social skills, I faced another difficulty as my parents were also getting divorced around the same time. And I just want to note that it is not very common for Chinese parents to get divorced. And in the midst of that, like there was no real conversation about what was happening. There was no conversation to me, to my sibling. There was no transition. It just felt like my dad left one day and we had to deal with it. It just happened. And I think as a child, I picked up drawing as one of my ways to just cope, distract, and entertain myself. And now as an adult, I am processing. I am still grieving my own childhood and using photography and writing and painting to do it. My healing journey translates into how I parent my 6-year-old daughter. And my daughter and I share a very free and transparent type of relationship. And I really try my best to use life as a learning opportunity of understanding. I encourage her a lot to just self-express, use art, and learning about my background as part of our life. And I really think by doing that, we are bringing transgenerational trauma, because as a child, I wasn't really given that space to do any of what I'm doing with my daughter. And as I'm learning about my background, I'm also teaching it to my daughter. It's very important to me as a parent that she is like growing up with her culture, our culture and our background. So she is in a dual language program on the Lower East Side, and she's learning Chinese and just being a part of the Asian community. And that's very important to me. And I've been in therapy for a few years now. So it has helped me understand, become aware, process, and make better conscious choices. I work with a few therapists and have changed therapists based on where I am in my journey. My first therapist was an older European woman who was straightforward, strict, and harsh. After a few years, I changed my therapist to a young South Asian woman who was understanding and gentle. Recently, I had the opportunity to try out an Asian male therapist, which is a big change for me as I usually prefer females. I'm in a place where I'm expanding who I let in, and I'm seeing my response to how I interact. I'll be presenting my photography on family gatherings. These photos are captured on analog, which is film, because my focus is on the subject matter and not so much of how it looks. I'll be sharing my screen. Okay.
Annie, I can share it if you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yes. Just let me know when you want me to go next.
Yeah.
Can everyone see? Great.
Awesome. So this picture is a birthday, it's a Mother's Day cake. So, and often we have cake in our celebrations all the time because cake symbolizes family. It symbolizes family gatherings, and that's, yeah. So next photo, please. This is a photo of my brother and my grandma watching TV at a family gathering. Next, Dan. This is a photo of hot pot, and oftentimes we gather around a hot pot for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for any occasion really, because hot pot is just like our love language. Food is our love language. Yeah. Next photo, please. This is a photo of another family gathering, as you can see. So the food that we have is like a mixture of like steamed fish, vegetables, and takeout. And the takeout is usually like duck, siu gai, siu yo, ta siu. So all the Cantonese takeout. Next photo, please. This is my daughter. This photo is very close to me because when I look at it, I see her, I see my grandparents in the photo. I see just growing up, and I'm just going to read because I think that's so much easier. So she is surrounded by furniture that symbolizes an immigrated Chinese family. The foldable table, foldable chairs, metal plates, teapots, and vases. And she doesn't know what it means yet, but I do. And it's such an important photo for me. So next photo, please. This is a photo of my grandparents and I at their home. And as they get older, I want to hold them closer. And photography is my way of preserving the time I spend with them. So thank you so much. This is the photography portion. I will be going on to paintings. So my paintings came from a place of trying to process. A few months ago, when I was in therapy, I started to visually understand these words: abuse, trigger, abandon, anger, happy, and I quickly jotted them down. My therapist was very encouraging about it. The webinar came up and I started to intentionally and purposely work on these paintings alongside. I didn't have a number of paintings in mind. I just allowed myself to just naturally process and heal with these paintings. The first painting right here, this is abuse. This painting shows abuse as layers of wounds, some fresh, some deep, and some scabby. Okay, I'm ready for the next one. This is trigger. Trigger disguises and blends in. Through my experience and the help of therapy, I've made aware of certain triggers. For this painting, I envisioned triggers as thorns. I molded the thorns in different colors as the color represents different stages of life. The white layer of paint symbolizes a disguise, as triggers can also be hard to identify. Next one, please. This is abandon. The hole in the painting symbolizes a deep desire for closure. And I think this painting really came from a place of when my dad left. And for many, many years, I couldn't close a hole. And then I think one day it just came to me that I am going to close it. I decide I am not going to seek closure from him. I will close my own hole because I can. I don't need that from someone else. I have that and I can do that for myself. So next painting, please. This is anger. Anger leeches on. The painting has symbolic leeches made of molding clay. And lastly, please. This is happy. Happy is peeling layers as I try to understand my own. So for this painting, these bumps or layers that you see are actually sort of my skin. I use glue and I put it on my hand and my arms and I let it dry. And then I peeled it off and then I incorporated it into the painting because I really wanted to feel like the sense of layers, my layers in that painting. So this concludes it all. Thank you so much.
Wow. I think everyone really felt it as we were going over the pictures, hearing your story. The art really came to life in many different ways. When we saw them, when you spoke, yeah, like I think all these heart reactions also just convey how much we're feeling it. Yeah, Uzma, Annie needs a show. Make it happen if you know anyone out there. Let's connect her. So please put your word cloud opportunity, make it happen right now. Drop whatever might be happening for you in the word cloud. And then while you are doing that, we have our final presenter, Robin. They, them pronouns. Robin's a licensed creative arts psychotherapist who has a master's degree in dance movement therapy and is currently working on an inpatient psychiatric unit with adolescents. As a biracial and non-binary person of Taiwanese and white American ancestry, their work foregrounds intersectionality and the flexibility to explore the in-between. Creatively, Robin also has a background in various forms of movement, including dance, yoga, and ice skating, which allows them to communicate with patients in ways that traditional psychotherapy does not utilize. None of us have seen this one. We've dress rehearsed, but not this one. So I think all of us are in for a treat. Robin, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I definitely, oh, my camera's like, what's going on? I wanted to say a few words first. Oh my gosh, why is it so, oh, there, okay. I am just sitting here. I'm sure there was stuff in the chat about people feeling a lot of things in their bodies, and I am definitely feeling that as someone whose predominant form of communication is through the body and through movement. And I'm just struck with, I'm so profoundly like moved and impressed by all the presenters that have gone before me, because words and visual art are not my forte, are not, you know, identities that I ascribe to myself. And so I just wanted to share that my piece today is going to be sort of a synthesis of the things that I've been feeling in my body as the other presenters have been going. I've been looking at the little word cloud and taking a few notes on some words. So to share a little bit about what I will be showing you today, the first time that I thought about my race very specifically and had the space to do that was in graduate school for my master's program. I'm a biracial person, and so everyone's speaking about this, like, you know, living in between and feeling in between. I see the betweenness with generations and things like that, and that is something that I've always identified with, and I identify with the like isolation and loneliness that that can bring. And so finding a way to connect. Oh, sorry. One other piece that I was thinking about is I'm also a queer person, and a lot of queer folks can probably identify with the not necessarily feeling like biological family or blood family is as accessible or as connected. And so in grad school, I had this whole process of like, how can I connect with my culture as a Taiwanese American person without necessarily going through my biological family. And so like things that I've like come up with is like, you know, the food and like the music and anything that I can get my hands on, reading books by Taiwanese authors that have been translated, because I also don't speak Mandarin. And I think that through music and through movement are ways that I can connect to those parts of myself. And so, yeah, what my grad school program culmination was a thesis, and in said thesis, I interviewed my mom about the role that like music and movement physically from a different country to America was like. And I had some keywords, and she provided me with a song that was popular while she was still living in Taiwan. And so what I did for my thesis was I played the music and I created a piece in that song as a way of like connecting with her and connecting with that part of myself. So I think that's what I'm gonna share with you all today. I'm gonna play that song and I'm gonna move. I'm sure many of you probably know this song. It was like very popular. So yes, we're gonna do some techie things so I can like prep the space, and then I'll be ready for y'all. So I'm gonna turn my camera off here so that, and my sound off. So see you on the other side. 你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的情也真，我的爱也真，月亮代表我的心。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？我的情不移，我的爱不变，月亮代表我的心，轻轻的一个吻，已经打动我的心，深深的断情，叫我思念到如今。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心。已经打动我的心，深深的感情，叫我思念到如今。你问我爱你有多深，我爱你有几分？你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心。你去想一想，你去看一看，月亮代表我的心。
Woo, what a way to have our final performance. Robin, thank you so much. Everyone, please, final chance to fill in words on the word cloud. Post your reactions in the chat. I love the reactions coming in. The hearts, the love, the applause. Put put in your reactions in the word cloud. And yeah, look at this. Powerful, healing, connection, truth, hope, love, awe. Oh, powerful, powerful, powerful. And the silence actually takes on a different meaning when you didn't say anything, but the song was there and the movement was there. So thank you for really showcasing that to all of us. Mm. Mm. So Annie and Robin are wonderful performers, presenters. What came up for you two as you witnessed your partner's self-expression? And, you know, feel free to take it in, you know, silence is okay too. Everyone is feeling it in your body.
Hi, Robin, the song, oh my goodness. It's a song that I know, and it's a very emotional song for me. So when I heard it, I didn't expect it. And your movements were so beautiful, and I definitely felt the different speeds in your movements. And it really did remind me of connecting with my mom, because, you know, some of these songs that she grew up with or she's listened to, I have listened to, because I think I've been trying to understand her. And by listening to certain music that she listened to, I feel more connected to her. So thank you so much for your performance, your movement. Thank you for bringing this back to us.
I was like telling the folks who are in this building with me, who are also on this panel earlier, that like tears are something that's not accessible to me, but I can feel them. So like, wow, everyone. Yeah, I think what struck me about Annie's work, and something that, you know, I was maybe dipping a toe into before I performed, is the power of like the nonverbal. And I loved getting your explanations about your photos and your paintings. And they were also just so powerful on their own. And just, I could feel, especially in the paintings with the textures, I could feel them even before you told me what they were called. And I just feel like that's so powerful. And, you know, I was saying in the chat, yeah, going back to the silence, I feel like silence, you know, it's associated with the verbal, right? Or the lack of the verbal, but there's still so much that can happen in that space. And like, you know, if you're raised in a certain way where you're not taught to speak up verbally, there are all these other avenues available to you. And I think in my work as a dance movement therapist, that's the avenue that I hope to open for the patients that I work with. And I'm just struck with this, like, yeah, like, let's get Annie a gallery, because like we need to take up space, and we deserve to take up space, even if we're not like, you know, the person shouting at the door trying to get in. There's so many ways to be powerful. And yeah, I'm really like, I didn't get to see the paintings before today. And so those are really what's sticking with me. And then thinking about the hopefulness and seeing the string through the generations, with all the way from your grandparents to your daughter, is just so moving and so beautiful. So yeah, hearts.
Oh, amazing. Even like, you know, everyone was doing the hearts, everyone was doing the things, you know, all these things we're drawing or symbolizing with our bodies, right? And we don't think about how much symbolism happens when they're unspoken. And as mental health providers, we are tuned into that in different ways, right? But what does it mean for us to consider ways that self-expression can happen intentionally and foster that intentional movement and creativity in sessions, outside of the sessions, with community, without community? And so right now we're gonna transition to a little fun activity that you're just going to see our 6 panelists just create a work of art. So 6 panelists, please open up the whiteboard space that we created earlier. I am going to share screen. And we're just gonna have everyone, when you are ready, let me know you're ready. Oh, someone already put in something there. So we're just gonna spend like 1 good minute having everyone just like fill in this Jamboard with whatever they want, and you in the audience just type in comments about just what you're responding as they create this art piece, which is a response to all 6 performances and presentations. So just check this out. I also do this sometimes in sessions with my clients, both young and older. So think about doing stuff like this as well. Yeah, so we're just witnessing this art. Some people are adding photos, family. People are adding Post-its, drawing hearts, just free-form scribbling. The word love, drawing. Yeah, just share your reactions. People are saying it's amazing, powerful presentation today, meaningful. Someone's talking about, I'm thinking of planning logistics for a future Annie and Robin art show, even though you've never met any of them. You know, like this is the power of art and healing and creativity and really understanding and healing from racism and trauma. Impactful, one of the most passionate collection of speakers I've ever experienced. Presenters, 30 more seconds to complete your work of art. We can take up space. We're not responsible for our trauma, but we're responsible for our healing. Hope, love, intergenerational resilience. I am the dream of my ancestors. We are stronger together. I come from love, feelings, all these sorts of colors. I'm actually thinking about the gold from Annie's painting earlier. 10 more seconds. Ah, there you go. Some leaves. All right, everyone. Time is up. Let's now go into the panel, right? We have about 15 minutes left. So we are just going to have a conversation, nothing too formal. And we're going to weave some Q&A from the audience into that. We've been collecting questions all throughout. So first question, react, like what was it like for you to be on stage doing what you were doing to celebrate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month? Were there people you were thinking about when you did your pieces? Like just, you know, what was it like for you? Yeah.
I will take a
Maureen,
stab at.
Maureen, then
Sorry.
Robin. I was just like, our performers are suddenly shy, right? That's what's going on. Maureen, then Robin.
I feel permission to receive and release. I feel imposter syndrome, and it's not even like the performance or the panel per se. It's strange. It's like this feeling of not being Asian enough because I am so new to connecting to who I am as a Filipina and what that means for me. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe people who are more Asian, who know more, who have lived through more, should be here. But this is my experience, and that's, it makes me both like sad and empowered that like what we've shared today is anecdotal, but also so common. It doesn't matter where we're from, you know, and I feel hope, so, and gratitude. And I thought about my family because They are very much the source of a lot of my hurt. I know they didn't mean it. That doesn't change the fact that they are the source of it. And I have gotten so far as to tell my mom that I will be in this kind of space, but haven't given her the access to witness me in it. And so I'm hoping that including them in my healing will be the next step. So thank you all so much. I'm in awe. I'm humbled.
Robin.
Yeah, I'm taking this in like another direction. I told the panelists this, or some of them might know that I don't really perform dance anymore. That's not something that I do. Today was the first time in probably years. So like, thank you all for bearing witness. But I saw a little question in the chat about tapping into art to heal when it's so guided by perfectionism. And I think one of the things for me is, as I said, I'm mostly these days dancing for myself, like literally in my room by myself, music on, just not even caring what I look like, sometimes closing my eyes so that I really don't know what I look like, and tuning into what impulses you feel internally. I think a lot of folks of marginalized identities who've had to survive in this world are so disconnected from their bodies that even giving someone the prompt to listen to internal impulse, it's like, huh? Like, I don't even know what that is. And so making a soft place for yourself to land, whether it's your own space or even outside, like in the park or whatever you can find, and just putting on music and tuning everything else out so that you can listen to yourself. And yeah, as a dance therapist, I'm all about like, yeah, take up space, move the way you want to move. It doesn't matter how it looks. Like maybe today's was a little more like pretty, but like I make wacko faces all the time. I work with teenagers, so I'm constantly playing and like putting my body in weird positions, but it's whatever calls to you, and that's okay. And it's a way to process. So I encourage everyone to try.
Keith, you look like you want to say something.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I was going to say to Robin, I dance in my living room all the time. It's so wonderful, therapeutic. I play basketball, so a lot of the young guys, they bring these speakers and they play hip hop and, they blast it on the court, and it's really fun for me. So I'm always dancing when I'm on the court too. And I wonder what people think about this old guy doing that, but I really love dancing ever since I was a little child. I still love it. I'm going to say this out loud so that I hold myself to it. I'm going to do a piece on stage, a poetry piece where I dance to part of it. That's what I've been wanting to do forever. Uh-oh, now I have to do it.
This is recorded, Keith, on slides, and the recording will be posted in 2 to 3 business days. So everyone's like, it's locked in, receipts in the chat. You all heard it here first, folks.
What I'm reminded of is how the orange guy, Donnie, will say stuff that contradicts everything that has been taped about him. So maybe I can do that. But what I wanted to say is there's a piece in one of my poems where I say, I think it's called I'm About to Burst. And I say, I am the voice my mother and father never had, speaking the language of bold. And I really do believe my parents, who were very shy, I think they wanted me to speak out and say all the things that they never said. They never told me that, but I really believe that. And so I feel empowered today, not every day. that what I was saying was my truth, and I believed with conviction what I was saying. So I feel very empowered, and I'm repeating myself. Anyway, that's all I need to say about that.
Heath, what you're sharing, and also the plants behind you and Linda and Daniel at the park, is just making me think about today as a metaphor for a fractal, which is in biology or in the world around us. There's like self-replicating patterns in plants, and a fern is an example of that, where like the smallest part of the fern looks like the leaf looks like the frond looks like the whole field. And so I think Grace Lee Boggs says this, small is all, like what happens at the smallest level happens at the biggest level. And I think, you know, I was thinking about why it feels so vulnerable to share a truth. And it's because you don't know how people will respond. But in this space that we've created today, my truth was reflected in so many other people's truths in different ways. And it was like the transformation in me that can happen, the healing in me can happen in community, can happen in generation, can happen in the world. And so just even witnessing how in just a few hours, a group of people who are mostly strangers, with a lot of people who are strangers, can be so vulnerable and healed. It just gives me so much hope for the concept of the fractal. And I just think that's really beautiful. And I could have not imagined how far I would come as a person from the person that I was many years ago in pain, like younger me. That person would be so proud of me right now. I'm going to cry. And I can't imagine that for you either. And for each of you in here, like how you've grown and going into that place of, if we went from that in our bodies to this in this community, I can't imagine what's going to come, but I also can't wait. And I saw Yvette asked in the chat, how can one begin to feel more, not intellectualize? I am on that journey, but I do think that like that journaling practice that I read from today, like just not trying to think and just put things out in whatever art form. It doesn't have to be journaling, just get it out of your body so you can look at it from the outside. You can dance it out, you can art it out, you can photograph, poet, whatever. I think the more you do it, the more you can try it. So just get it out of you and try not to think too much about it. I know that's hard, but keep practicing and you can do it. And we're here for you.
Thank you, Uzma. Linda, you got a big whole smile. You got something you want to share with everyone as we all share our final words?
I'm going to offer up the words of my grandpa. And as a teenager, I was a misfit. And Grandpa sat me down and we were smoking ciggies on the back deck. And he looked at me and he said, do the things that help you to remember who you are and stop doing the things that cause you to forget who you are.
Wow. So wise.
Really sitting with that. Oof. So we have a few minutes left, and our final remaining question actually goes to Annie. Annie, people want to know if they can buy your art. So answer that question and share any final words you have for everyone.
Hi again. I think there was so much going through my body, and actually journaling and writing and jotting things down is really part of what I like, helps me remember like processing and healing. So I actually have like photo here of like, I don't know if you guys can see, it's a body and it moved as you guys spoke. And I kind of like jotted down where I felt when you guys spoke, where in my body I was feeling it. And it helped. It was from like, you know, chest up, and it went all the way to my stomach as you guys presented, and sometimes in my throat. And so, yeah, I'm feeling very hopeful. I think this is the first time where I've been in a space like this, where there were so many combined experiences that were so familiar. And I've never felt like this before in such a community space. And I am very hopeful today. So thank you so much for Dan, Vanessa, like Jeannie, everyone that put this together. I am so beyond grateful, and I cannot wait to give the girls a hug, or even, sorry, I am so also very new to just non-binary, and I am also learning. So thank you for such a forgiving space and learning space. So as for my paintings and art, like I haven't, I would love to sell it one day and create more pieces like this, because I think my journey, it's so much involving healing and processing, and I love to just put this out into the world more and more. So thank you so much for asking. And if anyone can make that happen, like, where I can show this and present this, I would, take up that offer. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Annie. So we will have resources in the slides and recording that you will get in 2-3 business days. And as we close out, Linda wants to offer us a gift in these next 2 minutes. Yeah, take it away.
So this is for those of us that might be having a lot of activation in the nervous system and might be feeling that we're at the edges of like that feeling like my skin is going to burst out and my insides are going to be on my outsides. And so this comes from just some bilateral stimulation to just help the bigness of that come down a bit. So I call it the rain exercise. So if you like, so this involves the body. If you like, we're outside and it's raining really hard. It's raining so hard outside. And so we go running inside to get out from the rain. And you close the door behind you and you can hear the rain on the tin roof. And the rain is getting softer and you can hear the rain getting slowly softer. And then you can hear the rain become drizzle. And once the rain becomes drizzle, we know what happens next. It's time to go outside and look for the rainbow. So we go outside and you lift your face to the rain and you can feel it gently on the top of your head and on your face. And you rub the rain, the soft drizzle into your face. Perhaps offering your body some contact or some pressure wherever it feels appropriate for you. And then you have a look around, looking for the rainbow, and there it is. And you grab your imaginary paintbrush and dip it into the pot of gold at one end of the rainbow and make a big arc crossing the midline of the body for the brain-based therapist in the room. And then you switch hands and you grab the paintbrush with your other hand and you make another big sweep across the midline of the body and the brain, making another arc of the rainbow. And let's do that again. And we're reaching and extending. And then one more, reaching across and painting the arc of the rainbow. And then there's that pause. To take in the smells and the sounds after a big thunderstorm. And that which opens up in the space afterwards.
Thank you, Linda. I was just like, oof. All right. So now for everyone, give a round of applause. Huge list of suggested resources from our presenters today. Again, we're going to have the slides and recording posted within the 2 to 3 business days. Here's another one with books. To get CEs, please make sure you create a username and password at the NYU Silver CE online portal. You're going to have to click on the specific link for this event. Again, the slides will be provided for you within 2 to 3 business days. And then once you're on the online portal, you can fill in the billing information, click register and pay the processing fee. After registering, you're going to receive a confirmation with a link to complete the post-event evaluation. And then you're going to be able to access your certificate of completion within 1 to 2 days from taking the eval and then log back into the system. And then as mentioned earlier, you're going to receive confirmation email to then follow instructions for how to get your certificate. If you have any questions, 212-998-5973 or to email silver.continuingeducation@nyu.edu. Thank you again, Annie, Keith, Linda, Maureen, Robin, and Uzma for a wonderful event, and thank you to everyone for attending. Additionally, we invite you to join us for upcoming offerings. Tomorrow, facilitating support groups for youth peer advocates. Next Tuesday, the trauma of weight, stigma, bias in clinical spaces with youth. And next week on Thursday, trauma responsive telehealth for children and adolescents. Please visit our website for a full list, which is ctac.ny.org. You will get a feedback survey in the chat box if not already sent. And after this ends, so please, please, please complete it to show your support and love for this type of event or to add other types of feedback about what you want to learn more of. On behalf of CTAC, Annie, Keith, Linda, Maureen, Robin, and Uzma, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of the day. Any questions, contact ctac.info@nyu.edu. Take care, everyone.